John was a young man in his late 20s, full of ambition and dreams, but struggling to make them a reality. One afternoon, after a long morning at work, he decided to take a break and grab a coffee at a nearby cafe. It was a small, charming place with a cozy atmosphere, perfect for unwinding. As he walked in, the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and he looked around for a place to sit. That's when he noticed her. Evelyn, a woman in her 60s, was sitting alone at a corner table, sipping tea and reading a book. She had an air of quiet elegance about her. She frequented this cafe often, finding peace in its serene surroundings. But today, something was different. She seemed a little lost in thought, almost as if she was waiting for something or someone. John, intrigued by her presence, decided to approach. He wasn't sure why he felt drawn to her, but there was something about her that piqued his curiosity. He walked over, wearing his most charming smile, and asked if the seat across from her was taken. Evelyn looked up from her book, surprised by the interruption but not annoyed. She studied John for a moment, noting his youthful energy and the friendly glint in his eyes. There was something refreshing about him, something that made her want to know more. She smiled and gestured for him to sit down. As they began to talk, the conversation flowed easily. John spoke about his work, his dreams, and the challenges he faced. He was open and honest, and Evelyn found herself genuinely interested in what he had to say. She shared bits of her own life, how she had built her wealth over the years, and the joys and loneliness that came with it. John quickly realized that Evelyn was more than just an interesting person. She was also very wealthy. Her clothes, her jewelry, even the way she talked about her life hinted at a level of affluence he had never experienced. This sparked something in him. What had started as a casual conversation now took on a different meaning for him. He saw an opportunity, a chance to change his life. But he was careful not to let his intentions show. He continued to charm Evelyn, making her laugh and feel at ease. He knew that if he played his cards right, this could be the start of something much bigger than just a simple conversation in a cafe. For Evelyn, the encounter was refreshing. She hadn't felt this alive in a long time. John's youth and charm made her feel young again, and she enjoyed the attention he gave her. She didn't notice the subtle shift in his demeanor when he realized how wealthy she was. To her, he was just a nice young man who had brightened her day. As they parted ways, Evelyn promised to return to the cafe the next day, hoping to see John again. And John, now with a plan forming in his mind, assured her he would be there. Little did Evelyn know, this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would lead to unexpected consequences for both of them. Make sure you use simple English that an 8-year-old can easily understand and make it packed with suspense and interesting conflicts. It should be very addictive, emotionally evocative, creative synergy, and access to the subconscious. As Evelyn and John's relationship continued to develop, it didn't go unnoticed by those closest to her. Her friends who had known her for many years began to observe the increasing time she was spending with John and the undeniable affection she had for him. However, unlike Evelyn, they weren't completely sold on the idea of this sudden romance. During one of their regular lunch gatherings, Evelyn's closest friend, Margaret, decided to voice what had been on all of their minds. "Evelyn, darling," she began cautiously, "we've noticed how happy you seem lately, and we're so glad that you found someone who brings you joy. But are you sure about John? I mean, he's so much younger than you, and it's all happening so quickly." Evelyn smiled, brushing off Margaret's concerns. "I know what you're thinking, but John isn't like that. He genuinely cares for me, and I care for him. The age difference doesn't matter when you're in love, does it?" Her friends exchanged worried glances. Another friend, Linda, spoke up gently. "We just want to make sure you're being careful. You've worked hard for everything you have, and we hate to see someone take advantage of your kindness and generosity." Evelyn sighed, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. "I appreciate your concern truly, but I trust John. He's never asked me for anything, and he makes me feel, well, alive again. Isn't that what matters?" The conversation ended on a slightly strained note, with her friend still unconvinced but unwilling to push Evelyn further. They hoped that she was right, but the seeds of doubt had been planted in their minds, and perhaps in the back of Evelyn's as well. Meanwhile, John was continuing his career, all the while becoming more calculated in his approach. He knew that to keep Evelyn under his spell, he had to maintain the appearance of being wholly devoted to her. But as he became more comfortable in the relationship, his thoughts increasingly turned to the financial windfall he anticipated. Subtly, John began to weave conversations about the future into their time together. One evening, while they were enjoying a quiet dinner at Evelyn's home, he casually asked, "Have you ever thought about what you want to do with all this?" He gestured vaguely around her lavishly decorated living room. Evelyn, caught off guard by the question, looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "Well, I mean, you have such a beautiful home and so many wonderful things. Have you ever thought about your legacy? What you want to leave behind someday?" Evelyn smiled, thinking nothing of the question. "Oh, I suppose everyone thinks about that at some point. I've made sure everything is in order for my family." "But why are you asking about that now?" John shrugged nonchalantly. "I'm just curious. I've never been with someone who has so much to consider in terms of, well, wealth and assets. It makes me think about my own future too. His question lingered in Evelyn's mind longer than she expected. Though she had no reason to distrust John, she couldn't help but recall her friend's earlier warnings. Was there something more to his curiosity? But then she quickly dismissed the thought, convincing herself that John's interest was simply part of getting to know her better. But John was far from innocent in his inquiry. He was already calculating, trying to gauge just how much Evelyn might leave him if their relationship became more permanent. The more he learned about her financial situation, the more he felt that his decision to pursue her had been the right one. As John continued to charm Evelyn, he kept his true intentions carefully concealed. However, the whispers of doubt from her friends and his subtle probing into her finances were slowly building towards a confrontation that neither of them could foresee. A moment when all the truths would come crashing down. John's decision to propose to Evelyn came sooner than anyone expected, but it was a calculated move on his part. He knew that if he wanted to secure his future with Evelyn's wealth, he needed to act fast. The more time passed, the greater the chance that Evelyn or her friends might see through his facade. One evening, as they sat on Evelyn's patio under the stars, John set his plan into motion. The setting was perfect. Soft candlelight, the gentle hum of crickets, and a bottle of Evelyn's favorite wine. He had thought of everything to make the moment feel spontaneous and romantic. "Evelyn," John began, his voice filled with what sounded like genuine emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About how happy you've made me, how much you mean to me. I know our relationship might seem unconventional to some people, but I don't care about what others think. All I care about is you." Evelyn's heart fluttered. She had never felt so cherished, so adored. She gazed at John with a mixture of love and surprise as he continued. "Age is just a number, Evelyn. What we have is real, and I don't want to waste another moment without making it official." With that, John reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring that sparkled in the moonlight. Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "Evelyn Richardson, will you marry me?" John asked, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her feel like the only woman in the world. Tears welled up in Evelyn's eyes. She had been alone for so long, yearning for a love like this, and now it was here, right in front of her. Without a second thought, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, John, yes, I'll marry you." The words were barely out of her mouth before John slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a tight embrace. As they held each other, Evelyn felt a wave of joy wash over her, convinced that she had finally found the love she had always dreamed of. In the days that followed, Evelyn couldn't contain her excitement. She wanted to share the news with everyone who mattered to her, starting with her closest friends. Despite the lingering doubts they had voiced, she was confident that once they saw how happy she was, they would support her decision. Evelyn organized an intimate engagement party at her home, inviting only her closest circle of friends. The evening was filled with laughter, fine food, and celebratory toasts, but underneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of unease that Evelyn's friends couldn't shake. As they watched John play the role of the devoted fiancé, their suspicions only grew. To them, something felt off. John seemed too perfect, too rehearsed. His attentiveness to Evelyn felt more like a performance than genuine affection. They exchanged worried glances throughout the evening, but out of respect for Evelyn, they kept their concerns to themselves. Meanwhile, John reveled in the success of his plan. He had secured Evelyn's trust and affection, and now, with the engagement, he was one step closer to accessing the wealth he coveted. As he mingled with Evelyn's friends, he played the part of the charming, loving partner, all while mentally calculating how he would manage her assets once they were married. Despite the reservations of those closest to her, Evelyn was blissfully unaware of John's true intentions. To her, the engagement was a symbol of a new beginning, a chance to finally have the companionship and love she had longed for. But as she celebrated this new chapter in her life, the seeds of deception that John had planted were beginning to take root. setting the stage for a dramatic revelation that would turn her world upside down. As the days turned into weeks, Evelyn immersed herself in the joy of planning her wedding. For her, this was more than just a ceremony. It was a celebration of the love she believed she had found, a second chance at happiness. She spent hours selecting the perfect venue, choosing her dress, and carefully curating the guest list. Every detail had to be perfect because, to Evelyn, this was a dream come true. John, on the other hand, feigned enthusiasm for the wedding preparations. He accompanied Evelyn to meetings with florists, caterers, and planners, all the while his mind was elsewhere, focused on the real prize. He knew that time was of the essence. The sooner they were married, the sooner he would secure his financial future. As they sat together one evening, discussing the final touches for the wedding, John casually brought up the idea of a prenuptial agreement. Evelyn, I've been thinking, he began, choosing his words carefully. Given our different financial backgrounds, it might be wise to sign a prenup. I don't want anything to come between us, and I think it would protect both of us, especially you. Evelyn looked at him surprised. A prenup? I don't think we need one, John. I trust you completely. John smiled, playing the part of the considerate partner. I trust you too, Evelyn. But this isn't about trust. It's about being smart. It's just a formality, something to ensure that we're both protected, no matter what happens. You have a lot more at stake here, and I want you to feel secure. Evelyn hesitated, but John's reasoning seemed sound. She knew that many wealthy people had prenups, and if it was something John thought was important, she didn't want to refuse him. All right, John, she agreed. If it makes you feel better, we can do that. John's smile widened, but behind it was a calculated glee. The prenup he had in mind was designed to protect him, not Evelyn. He planned to have her sign documents that would gradually give him control over her assets, cloaked in legal jargon that he knew she wouldn't question. With the prenup conversation settled, John moved on to his next objective, gaining control of Evelyn's finances. He began to subtly manipulate her, planting seeds of doubt about her current financial advisors. I noticed that your investments aren't performing as well as they could be, he mentioned one day as they reviewed her portfolio. I have some experience with this sort of thing. Maybe I could take a look and help manage some of your finances, just to ensure everything is in order for our future together. Evelyn, who had never been particularly interested in the intricacies of her wealth, saw John's offer as an act of love. He was, after all, her soon-to-be husband, and she trusted him implicitly. If you think it's a good idea, John, then I'm happy to let you help, she said, handing him the reins of her financial world without a second thought. John's plan was unfolding perfectly. With Evelyn's trust firmly in his grasp, he began to make subtle changes, reallocating funds, opening new accounts in both their names, and quietly consolidating power over her wealth. He made sure to keep Evelyn in the dark about the specifics, always reassuring her that everything was being handled for their mutual benefit. As the wedding date approached, Evelyn was blissfully unaware of the danger she was in. She was focused on the excitement of becoming Mrs. John Hayes, convinced that she had found the love of her life. But John's true intentions were far from romantic. His manipulations were setting the stage for a future where he would control not only Evelyn's heart, but her fortune as well. While Evelyn was busy choosing flowers and finalizing the guest list, John was busy ensuring that, once they were married, he would have full control over her estate. He knew that once they said, I do, he could put his plan into motion, and everything Evelyn owned would slowly but surely become his. The wedding preparations continued, with Evelyn's excitement growing each day. She never suspected that the man she was about to marry had no intention of loving her forever. Instead, John was counting down the days until he could make his move, secure in the knowledge that once the wedding was over, he would have everything he ever wanted. But what John didn't realize was that even the best laid plans could unravel in the most unexpected ways, and the secrets he was keeping wouldn't stay hidden forever. Evelyn's sudden illness takes everyone by surprise, especially John, who sees it as both a potential setback and an unexpected opportunity. Evelyn, who had always been full of life and energy, is suddenly bedridden, her vibrant spirit dimmed by the weight of her illness. The doctors are unsure of the cause, but they assure her that with rest and care, she should recover. However, her weakened state leaves her dependent on others, and John quickly steps in to fill that role. John, though outwardly concerned, views Evelyn's illness as a chance to accelerate his plans. He knows that with Evelyn in a vulnerable position, she'll be more likely to trust him completely, and he can finally gain full control over her finances. He insists on taking care of her personally, making sure she sees him as her primary source of support. Evelyn, too weak to question his intentions, gratefully accepts his help, believing that John's attentiveness is a sign of his deep love for her. Each day, John visits Evelyn in the hospital, bringing her flowers and small gifts to lift her spirits. He stays by her side, holding her hand and speaking in soft, comforting tones. But beneath his facade of concern, John is calculating his next move. He begins to steer their conversations towards their financial future, subtly pushing Evelyn to make decisions that would benefit him in the long run. "Evelyn, my love," John says one afternoon as he sits by her bedside, "we need to make sure everything is in order for our future. I know you're not feeling well, but it's important that we finalize the arrangements we discussed. I want to ensure that you're taken care of no matter what happens." Evelyn, too tired to think clearly, nods weakly. "You're right, John. I trust you to handle everything. I don't want to worry about any of that right now." John smiles, his grip tightening on her hand. "Don't worry, darling. I've already spoken to the lawyer, and we can sign the necessary documents whenever you're ready. I just want to make sure you're comfortable and secure." Evelyn closes her eyes, her trust in John unwavering. She doesn't realize that the documents John is pushing her to sign are designed to give him full control over her wealth, leaving her with nothing if something were to happen to her. As the days pass, John continues to manipulate the situation, ensuring that Evelyn is completely dependent on him. He manages her medications, oversees her treatment, and keeps close tabs on her financial advisors, making changes where necessary to consolidate his power. He's careful not to push too hard, always maintaining the appearance of a devoted fiancé. But in his mind, he's already counting the money he'll inherit once Evelyn is out of the picture. Evelyn's friends, still uneasy about her relationship with John, try to visit her in the hospital, but John carefully controls access to her, claiming that she needs rest and shouldn't be disturbed. He knows that if anyone were to raise concerns, his plans could be jeopardized, so he keeps a tight grip on the situation. Despite her illness, Evelyn remains optimistic about the future. She talks about the wedding, about the life she and John will build together once she's better. She doesn't see the cold calculation behind John's warm smiles, nor does she suspect that he's already making plans for a future without her. But as John edges closer to achieving his goal, he underestimates the strength and resilience of the woman he's trying to deceive. Evelyn may be weak, but she's not helpless, and the web of lies John has spun around her is beginning to unravel in ways he never anticipated. The sudden illness that he thought would be his ticket to wealth may turn out to be the very thing that exposes his true intentions. Evelyn's world shatters as she lies in her hospital bed, pretending to be asleep while John, thinking she is out of earshot, reveals his true intentions over the phone. His voice, once filled with the sweet words of love and care, is now cold and calculating as he discusses how he plans to secure her fortune after their marriage. Each word cuts deep, and Evelyn feels a mix of heartbreak and fury as the reality of John's betrayal sinks in. For a moment, she's paralyzed with shock. How could she have been so blind? The man she thought had brought love and light back into her life was only after her wealth. The realization is like a dagger to her heart, but Evelyn knows she cannot afford to crumble. She must protect herself and the fortune she worked so hard to build. She must act quickly and decisively, without tipping John off that she knows the truth. Evelyn waits until John leaves the room, his conversation still echoing in her mind. Once she's sure he's gone, she reaches for her phone with trembling hands. She knows what she has to do. With every ounce of strength she can muster, Evelyn contacts her lawyer, Mr. Davis, a man she distrusted for many years. She explains the situation in a hushed voice, her emotions barely contained. "Mr. Davis, it's Evelyn. I need to make immediate changes to my will and financial arrangements. John, he's not who I thought he was. He's been planning to take everything from me. I need to ensure he gets nothing." Mr. Davis, alarmed by her urgency, assures her that he will help her put protections in place. He advises her to remain calm and continue to act as if nothing has changed while he sets the necessary legal processes in motion. Evelyn, though still reeling from the betrayal, agrees. She knows that she must keep up the charade if she wants to outmaneuver John. Over the next few days, Evelyn plays her part perfectly. She continues to feign weakness, allowing John to believe she's still oblivious to his schemes. Meanwhile, she works closely with Mr. Davis to rewrite her will, ensuring that her assets will go to those who truly deserve them, her family, her friends, and the charities she cares about. She also takes steps to revoke the financial control she had so trustingly handed over to John. The strength and resolve she shows in these moments are a testament to her character. Though deeply hurt, Evelyn refuses to be a victim. She draws on the inner strength that had helped her build her fortune in the first place, determined to turn the tables on the man who thought he could deceive her so easily. As Evelyn finalizes the changes with Mr. Davis, she begins to feel a sense of empowerment. She may have been betrayed, but she won't let John's greed destroy her. She knows that the time to confront him is drawing near and she's ready for it. This time she will be the one in control and John will have no idea what's coming. The morning of the wedding is a blur of activity. The grand estate is adorned with lavish decorations, a testament to Evelyn's taste and wealth. Guests begin to arrive, dressed in their finest, eager to witness what they believe is a love story defying the odds of age and race. The atmosphere is one of celebration, with everyone unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Evelyn, dressed in a stunning gown that belies her inner turmoil, looks every bit the radiant bride, but behind her calm exterior, her mind is racing. Today is not just her wedding day. It's the day she will reclaim control of her life. She steels herself for what is to come, knowing that the man standing beside her at the altar is not the loving partner she had once believed him to be, but a predator looking to strip her of everything she holds dear. John, on the other hand, can barely contain his excitement. As he exchanges vows with Evelyn, he can almost feel the wealth slipping into his grasp. His smile is broad, his demeanor confident. To him, this is the culmination of his meticulously crafted plan. He has played his part perfectly, and now he believes the rewards are his for the taking. The ceremony proceeds without a hitch, and as the couple is pronounced husband and wife, the guests erupt into applause. John basks in the attention, convinced that he has secured his future. The newlyweds greet their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes, but all the while, Evelyn's heart is pounding with anticipation. Finally, the moment arrives. As the guests gather for the reception, Evelyn discreetly signals to her lawyer, Mr. Davis, who has been waiting in the wings. He approaches the couple, holding a sleek leather portfolio containing the documents that will change everything. Evelyn takes a deep breath and addresses the room. Ladies and gentlemen, she begins, her voice steady but commanding attention. The room falls silent as all eyes turn to her. Before we continue with our celebration, there is something important I need to share with you all. John's smile falters slightly as he notices the seriousness in her tone. But he quickly recovers, confident that whatever she has to say cannot disrupt his plans. Evelyn continues, her gaze never leaving John's. As you all know, today marks a new chapter in my life. But before we move forward, there are a few legal matters that must be addressed. She nods to Mr. Davis, who steps forward and hands her the documents. John, Evelyn says, her voice firm, I want you to know that I've taken steps to protect myself and my assets. I've made significant changes to my will and financial arrangements, and Mr. Davis is here to ensure that everything is in order. A murmur ripples through the crowd as the guests exchange confused glances. John's face drains of color, this confident facade beginning to crumble. What are you talking about, Evelyn? He asks, trying to maintain his composure. Evelyn doesn't waver. I've overheard you, John, she says, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. I know about your plans to take control of my wealth, but you won't succeed. I've made sure of that. The room is dead silent as the weight of Evelyn's words sinks in. The guests, many of whom had harbored their own suspicions about the relationship, are stunned by the revelation. John stands frozen, his mind racing as he realizes that everything he thought he had secured is slipping through his fingers. Evelyn hands the documents to Mr. Davis, who begins to explain the legal changes to the astonished crowd. As of today, John has no claim to Mrs. Evelyn's wealth. All of her assets have been securely allocated to her chosen beneficiaries, and any previous agreements made under duress are null and void. John is speechless, his mind reeling from the public humiliation. He stares at Evelyn, his expression a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. But Evelyn, no longer the vulnerable woman he once thought he could exploit, stands tall, her eyes locked with his. This marriage may be legal, Evelyn says quietly, but it was built on lies, and now everyone knows the truth. With that, Evelyn turns her back on John, leaving him to face the judgment of the guests, who are already beginning to whisper and exchange knowing looks. The grand wedding that John had imagined as a gateway to a life of luxury has become a nightmare of exposure and disgrace. After the shocking revelation at the wedding, John's initial reaction is one of sheer outrage. He had meticulously planned this moment, believing he was on the verge of securing a future of wealth and comfort. But now, everything has unraveled before his eyes. He tries to argue to plead his case, but the words stumble out incoherently as he realizes the magnitude of his defeat. Evelyn, this isn't fair. You can't just do this. John sputters, his voice laced with desperation. He tries to reach out to her, but Evelyn steps back, her calm demeanor unwavering. Fair? Evelyn replies, her tone steady and cold. Fair is not deceiving someone who trusted you. Fair is not manipulating someone for their money. This marriage was a sham, John, and you know it. The guests, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, watch in stunned silence as the confrontation unfolds. Some of them had suspected John's motives from the beginning, but no one had expected Evelyn to take such a bold stand. The shock on John's face is evident as he realizes that there is no way out of this situation. He is trapped, exposed for the fraud that he is. In the days that follow, Evelyn takes swift action. She files for an annulment, citing fraud and deception as the grounds for ending the marriage. The legal proceedings move quickly, with her lawyer, Mr. Davis, ensuring that John is left with no claim to her wealth. Every asset he tried to take control of is either recovered or protected under Evelyn's name. John, once confident in his ability to outsmart Evelyn, is left scrambling. His reputation is ruined, not just in their social circle but also in the professional world. Word spreads quickly about the man who tried to con a wealthy woman and was publicly humiliated in the process. His attempts to rebuild his life are met with closed doors and cold shoulders, as no one wants to associate with someone who has been so thoroughly exposed. Meanwhile, Evelyn emerges from the ordeal stronger and more determined than ever. She realizes that she had allowed herself to be vulnerable, but she refuses to let this experience define her. Instead, she takes back control of her life, focusing on her own happiness and well-being. She surrounds herself with her true friends, the ones who had tried to warn her but supported her regardless. They rally around her, helping her move on from the ordeal and find joy in her life once more. Evelyn also becomes an advocate for other women, sharing her story as a warning against those who might fall prey to similar schemes. Her dignity, though tested, remains intact, and she uses her experience to empower others. As for John, he is left with nothing. His desperation leads him to attempt various schemes to recover his lost fortune, but he finds that his reputation has preceded him. No one is willing to give him a second chance, and he eventually fades into obscurity, a cautionary tale of greed and deception. Evelyn, on the other hand, finds peace in the life she rebuilds. She knows she was fooled, but she also knows she was strong enough to take control of the situation and protect herself from further harm. She has outsmarted the man who tried to deceive her, and in doing so, she has reclaimed her strength and dignity. With John out of her life, Evelyn finds herself at a crossroads. The experience with him had been a harsh wake-up call, but rather than allowing it to embitter her, Evelyn chooses to channel her energy into rebuilding herself. She begins by reconnecting with the friends she had distanced herself from during her whirlwind romance with John. These friends, who had always had her best interests at heart, welcome her back with open arms, relieved to see the strong, independent woman they've always known. Evelyn starts to embrace the freedom of her independence, realizing that she had lost sight of her own worth during her relationship with John. She rediscovers old passions, spends time traveling, and indulges in the simple joys of life that she had once taken for granted. Her days are filled with laughter, meaningful connections, and a renewed sense of purpose. Evelyn is no longer defined by her relationship status or her wealth. She is defined by the strength and wisdom she has gained from her experiences. Reflecting on her journey, Evelyn sees her relationship with John as a life lesson. She acknowledges the mistakes she made in trusting someone who didn't have her best interests at heart, but she doesn't dwell on them. Instead, she focuses on what she has learned: the importance of self-worth, the dangers of blind trust, and the power of resilience. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring and unexpected tales, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us, so stay tuned for more exciting content.